So here's what happened. My best friend ended up getting pregnant, and the dad is my boyfriend. Everyone in my family found out about it. Because of that, I felt like I had to leave my home. Now, fast forward 15 years, my mom is telling me that I should start talking again to my ex-boyfriend and my former best friend who got pregnant. This whole saga kicked off about 15 years ago, and trust me, it's a story that's had a huge effect on me. I'm 33 now, but let's rewind to when I was just 18, in my last year of high school, thinking I had everything figured out. Back then, I was living at home with my folks and my 4 brothers and sisters. Life was pretty standard, going to school, hanging out at home, and spending loads of time with my best friend, Emily. We were both 18 and pretty much inseparable. Seriously, we were those friends who did everything together. Birthdays, holidays, you name it. If you saw one of us, you could bet the other wasn't far behind. Our parents used to joke that we were joined at the hip because we were always side by side. Then there was Max, my boyfriend at the time. He was 20, and we'd been dating for 3 years. Our parents were super close too, like Emily and I, which meant Max and I had known each other forever. I was head over heels for Max, thinking he was the one and dreaming about our future together. We were pretty serious, talking about getting married after he graduated from college. He was in his 2nd year, and even though I was planning to go to university, part of me was totally okay with the idea of marrying him and settling down as a stay-at-home mom. My folks thought Max was great and were all for our relationship. I was genuinely happy and thought everything in my life was going just the way it should. My sister, who's 20, was dating the brother of my boyfriend, Max, who's 23. Pretty much all our brothers and sisters were super tight with each other. At the start of one school year, I noticed that my best friend, Emily, wasn't her usual self. She seemed really sad and kind of distant. After I kept asking her what was up, she finally told me she was pregnant. This totally took me by surprise, because I had no clue she and her boyfriend had split up, and I didn't even know she was seeing someone else. When I asked her who the dad was, she didn't really want to talk about it. She kind of hinted that it might be her ex, but she was so upset, I just let it go and tried to be there for her instead. I was right by her side when she broke the news to her family. Her parents were not thrilled, but they said they'd support her no matter what. They wanted to know who the dad was, but Emily wouldn't tell them and made me promise not to say anything either. Her family didn't even know she had a boyfriend before this. During the next 9 months, I did everything I could to support her. I went with her to see the baby on the ultrasound, to doctor's appointments, helped her deal with mean comments at school, and got her nursery ready. Whenever she felt sick or just down, I was there. I even organized a baby shower for her, helped her pick out baby stuff, and we even went to parenting classes together. We talked about baby names, and she asked me to be with her when the baby was born. I could see the pregnancy was really hard on her, both emotionally and physically, so I tried my best to help out. Emily was my best friend, my ride or die, and I loved her loads. Then, about 2 weeks before the baby was due, I was at the mall and bumped into her ex. Even though I had promised not to get involved, seeing him and thinking about how much Emily was going through made me so angry. I couldn't hold back, and I totally went off on him. I told him he was awful for leaving Emily to deal with the pregnancy all on her own and not caring about his kid. So, when I told the guy, Emily's ex, about Emily being pregnant and all, he was totally floored. He had no clue what I was talking about. Turns out, Emily hadn't even mentioned the pregnancy to him, and when I dropped the news that she was about to pop any day now, he was like, "No way, that can't be mine." We split over a year ago and haven't been together since then. I was all mixed up, but ended up saying sorry for losing it at him in public. That's when he got all cheeky, threw some harsh words my way, and dropped a hint that maybe I should be asking Max, my boyfriend, if he knew anything about it. At the time, I didn't really let what he said sink in. Max and Emily, they've been buddies since forever because of our families being so tight, but as far as I knew, they were just friends, nothing more. Later that day, I was getting ready for a movie night with my younger sister, who's 14. Let's call her S. I started venting to her about the whole confrontation with Emily's ex and what he suggested about Max. Normally, my sister's pretty vocal, but this time she clammed up and didn't say much back. After a bit, she said she needed a moment and took off to the bathroom. I figured I'd grab some snacks, so I headed to the kitchen, and that's when I overheard S giving our mom a piece of her mind. This part's a bit blurry because, honestly, my emotions were all over the place. S was filling in our mom about my run-in with the ex and repeating his hint about Max possibly being the dad. She also said she was tired of keeping secrets from me. That's when I walked in and heard the bombshell. Max was actually the father of Emily's baby. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was completely stunned. I walked into the kitchen and both my mom and S turned pale as ghosts when they saw me. S started bawling her eyes out. Through tears and some tough talks, S filled me in on the details, and then, piecing together stuff from other people, I found out that at the end of summer break, Max and Emily ended up at the same party, had way too much to drink, and one thing led to another. Emily ended up pregnant from that night, and she did tell Max, but they were both too scared and embarrassed to tell me anything about it. So here's the thing. Emily and Max decided not to tell their parents at first, but Emily couldn't keep it a secret for long and ended up telling her mom and dad. Her parents then spilled the beans to Max's parents, and eventually, my parents found out too. This whole secret-sharing party happened when Emily was just starting her pregnancy. By the time she was halfway through, pretty much everyone in our circle, including all of our siblings and Max and Emily's families, were in on the secret. Everyone, that is, except for me. Finding out about all of this was like a punch to the gut. I felt so sick and upset, I couldn't even talk to anyone for 3 whole days. My parents tried to say sorry, telling me they kept it quiet because they didn't want to hurt me or mess up everyone's relationships. Max and Emily, they tried to reach out, blowing up my phone with texts and calls, even showing up at my place. But I just couldn't face them. Then one day Max's mom came over, and my mom let her into my room while I was just lying there feeling totally wrecked, inside and out. She was trying to get me to see why I should forgive them, talking about how Emily and the baby needed me. I just couldn't respond. A couple of weeks after that, Emily had her baby, but it was really tough on her. She had a scary delivery, lost a lot of blood, and they had to do surgery to make sure she and the baby were okay. Max was there for the birth, and hearing about it just broke me even more. I had been looking forward to being there, being part of it all, and now I was just too hurt and upset to be anywhere near them. My older sister rushed off to the hospital to be with her boyfriend, and my other siblings weren't around. So it was just me and my parents at home. I really just wanted to curl up and cry, maybe have my mom there to comfort me. But then my mom got a call from Emily's mom, and suddenly she and my dad were getting ready to head to the hospital too. I was like, wait, why can't you stay with me? But my mom said Emily's family needed them right now, and we'd talk later. I tried to tell her I needed them too, but it felt like everyone had chosen Emily's side over mine. So when my mom told me not to be selfish, and then they just took off, I was left all by myself at home. And let me tell you, my mind was spinning. How could my own parents choose to go support someone who had hurt me so badly? Here I was, feeling all kinds of pain, and they called me selfish? That didn't sit right with me at all. I wasn't sure if it was okay to feel this way, but before I knew it, I was getting really, really mad. The kind of mad I'd never felt before, all mixed up with feeling super betrayed. In that whirlwind of feeling upset and betrayed, I started throwing my stuff into bags, thinking I'd just leave. But then, I kind of paused, and ended up just sitting there, not really sure about anything anymore. It was like all the energy had just drained out of me. Out of nowhere, my sister sends me a text. She's telling me Emily had her baby, a little girl, and they're both doing fine. She even sent a picture of the baby, Sarah, which was the name Emily and I had picked out together not too long ago. Then she hits me with another text, saying that my parents were off to celebrate with Emily and Max's folks at a bar. That's about when my brain just checked out. I was overwhelmed, couldn't really process anything else. Next thing I know, I'm on a train, leaving everything behind. Ended up in Phoenix, staying at a hostel. I managed to find a job at a store and started figuring out how to finish high school from there. My family, including Max and Emily, they all tried to get in touch. My mom was freaking out, leaving me all these voicemails asking me to come home, and they even reported me missing. But I was 18, so it's not like they could do much about it. That's when Dean comes into the picture. He's 21, living in Phoenix too, and kind of in a tough spot with his own family. We clicked pretty quickly and became good friends. Dean was a lifesaver during that time. I was struggling big time, no clue how to look after myself or how to adult, you know. He introduced me to his friends, helped me get through high school, and eventually, I moved in with him and his crew. So, Dean was like this rock for me when I was going through a really tough time. I hit this point where I was struggling a lot, even thought about seeing a therapist, because I was feeling so down. But I had no way to afford it. Dean was right there with me though, supporting me every step of the way. I honestly don't think I could have made it without him. After hanging out for about a year, we started dating. Then Dean came into some money from his grandpa and decided to take a big leap and move to a major city across the country. Even though our relationship wasn't that old, he asked me to join him. I was hesitant at first, because we both had our own emotional stuff to deal with, and I was still feeling pretty shaky about where I was at in life. But I decided to take the plunge and go with him. We moved, found jobs, and just tried to make it work. Right after I turned 21, we got married on a whim. It was totally spontaneous, but we went through with it. I ended up going to college, and Dean helped me pay for it. He also started his own business, which really took off. So things started to get a bit easier for us financially. I was studying and working part-time, contributing where I could. We definitely had our share of tough times, but we made it through. After college, I started working at his company, and together we built it up from there. Looking back, I don't think I was actually in love with Dean when we first got married. I mean, I loved him, sure, but it wasn't like that deep in love feeling. But he was always there for me, no matter what, and now I can honestly say I couldn't love him more if I tried. He's the love of my life. We've been married for 12 years now, and have 2 little boys. One is 2 years old, and the other is just 6 months. I've had moments of regret about leaving my family behind, but going back just wasn't an option. It hurt too much, feeling like my family had picked Emily and Max over me. I did end up seeing a therapist when I was 25 to work through some of those feelings. Then, last year, right around the start of the pandemic, I got an email from a 14-year-old girl named Evelyn. Turns out she's my niece, my older sister, and Max's brother's daughter. She'd heard about me and wanted to connect. I was pretty hesitant at first, but we started emailing back and forth. She told me she didn't know anything about what happened 15 years ago, so our chats were pretty chill. We talked about her school and interests, and she filled me in a bit on my family. So I found out I have 10 nieces and nephews, which was a lot to take in. Turns out Max ended up marrying Emily about 4 years after I took off, and they had 2 more kids besides Sarah. It seemed like my family kept hanging out with Max and Emily's families, just going on with life as if nothing had changed, even though I wasn't there anymore. When Evelyn, my niece, tried to get into what happened back then, I didn't dive into the details. I just told her that sometimes people and relationships change, leading us to go different ways. We kept emailing back and forth for almost a year. Then, this January, Evelyn shared how tough the pandemic was hitting her family. She told me my parents were having a hard time keeping their house, and both my brothers lost their jobs and were struggling with money. It was pretty surprising to hear all this from her, especially since she's only 14, but it sounded like the tough times were causing stress at her home, too. All this got me feeling really guilty and full of regrets, and on top of that, I just had a baby, so I was all over the place emotionally. I talked it over with Dean, my husband, who's always super supportive. He told me he'd back me up no matter what I decided to do. We're doing okay financially, not rich, but we're comfortable, and the pandemic didn't hit us too hard. After getting all the details and talking it through with Dean, we decided to help out my parents with their house situation. So, a week ago, we flew back to my hometown for the first time in 15 years to see my family. Seeing them brought up a whirlwind of feelings, regret, pain from the past, and that sense of being let down. I think my parents were just happy to see me, which made the whole day pretty surreal. We had a long chat and agreed to try and be on speaking terms, at least. It's been so long, though, and sometimes it feels like I'm talking to strangers. Dean and I stayed for a week, and we kept the conversations going. I started to feel like maybe we could have a kind of friendly, if distant, relationship. But then my mom brought up the idea of me sitting down to talk with Max and Emily. She seemed to want everything to go back to how it was before. I made it clear that I wasn't interested in talking to them, even though I've moved past what happened. So here's the deal. I've got zero connection with Max and Emily these days, and I'm really not looking to stir up old drama with them. I did tell my mom that I'm open to trying to get along with my family as they are now. I mean, I've actually grown pretty fond of my niece, but when it comes to Max, Emily, and their crowd? No, thanks. I'm good. I never told my family they had to cut ties with them or anything, but hanging out with them? That's a hard pass for me. Dean, my husband, he's totally got my back on this. Then my mom goes and calls me selfish, saying I need to try and fix things. I was like, nope, not happening, and told her it's her call if she wants to keep a relationship with me. She said okay, but then, get this, Max's mom calls me up out of the blue, demanding that I talk to Max and Emily because apparently my coming back has got them all stressed out. I was like, how did you even get my number? And hung up on her. I called my mom to see what was up, and yep, she gave them my number, thinking it would help heal our family bonds. That really felt like she was picking them over me, again. She got all emotional, calling me selfish for wanting my family back the way it was. I haven't talked to any of them for days, even though my mom and Max's mom keep trying to reach me. Part of me feels like I'm doing the right thing, sticking up for my own peace and for Dean, who's been nothing but supportive. But now I'm starting to second-guess myself. I'm wondering if maybe I should just talk to Emily and Max. Part of me is even questioning if I made too big a deal out of everything 15 years ago. Am I being selfish by not trying harder to fix things? I could really use some advice on what to do next. It's like all of a sudden, I'm doubting everything and feeling totally lost. Update 1. Wow, can you believe it's been 2 years since I shared my story? I've gotten so many messages asking for an update. And first off, I just got to say thanks to everyone who's been so kind and supportive. It means a ton. A bunch has happened since then, not all of it good, but I'll try to keep this short and sweet. I didn't talk about my little sister in my first post. Things got pretty rocky between her and our parents after I left, and she cut off contact with them when she turned 20. I got her number from our older sister. And yeah, it was super awkward at first, since it had been like 15 years, but we started talking again. She was pretty upset with me for leaving, and she's been through a lot. She's got a toddler and a baby now, and somehow those little ones have brought us back together. She's like my best friend now, and we chat every day. I keep in touch with my brothers too, but we're not super close or anything. My older sister and I are doing all right. Though we did have a bit where we didn't talk much since she's married to Max's brother, and all the family drama was a lot for her. But things are better now, and I've got a great relationship with my nieces and nephews. I didn't go to my niece's birthday party though. It just felt like it would be too much for me. Now, about my parents, this part's kind of tough. My mom kept on trying to get me to talk to Max and Emily, and she didn't stop bugging me about it for months, even after I got back. It was like I was 18 again, dealing with all those rough feelings. So my mom was really laying it on thick, almost like she was trying to guilt-trip me big time. She was upset that I wasn't doing what she wanted, especially when it came to her friends and her own health issues. She even said I was keeping her from seeing her grandkids, which was way over the top. Then, when I had my daughter last June, my mom kind of lost it. How? Imagine getting over 100 calls a day and texts every 20 minutes with her talking about stuff I couldn't care less about, and even bothering Dean, my husband, with it all. That was the last straw for me. I was scared to just block her number, so I ended up talking to my dad instead. This was a big deal because we hadn't really had a serious, deep conversation in like 17 years. I was just so worn out from looking after my 3 kids and dealing with all this drama, I kind of just let everything out to him, all my feelings and everything that had been building up. He didn't say much back then, but something must have clicked because the flood of calls from my mom finally started to slow down. And then, something big must have happened, because by August, my dad had decided to file for divorce. My dad and I talk now and then, but things between us are still kind of awkward, not like how they used to be. My mom took the divorce pretty hard. Her calls got even crazier in August, and it wasn't just me she was bothering. I ended up changing my number, and since February, she hasn't been able to get in touch with me. So, one of my brothers let me know that our mom's been having a tough time with anxiety and depression, and she's lost a bunch of friends. I'm not really sure if she's still hanging out with Max and Emily's family, but to be honest, I'm over it. I don't want her around me or my kids anymore. The stuff she said about me and Dean, who she barely knows, especially after we hadn't talked for 15 years, is just wild. It's sad not having a mom in my life, but I feel like trying to fix whatever's left of our relationship would just drain me and be really painful. As for Max and Emily, like I said before, Max's mom tried to get in touch. I blocked her number, and that was that. I have no clue what's up with them. We haven't talked at all. The only bit of drama was in August, when everything seemed to fall apart, and Bill, who's Max's brother, dropped off a letter from Emily. I haven't even opened it. Part of me is kind of curious about what she could possibly say after all this time, but then I worry it'll just stir up a bunch of old bad feelings. Right now, I'm just focusing on my little family with Dean and our kids. Dean's been amazing through all of this mess. I'm really hoping we can just leave all this drama in the past and move on. Update 2. Hey there. I'm not sure who's going to see this, but I wanted to share a bit about what's been happening since my last update a few months ago. I've gotten a ton of messages filled with advice and kind words, and I can't tell you enough how much they've helped me. I wish I could thank each one of you personally. I'm doing my best to reply to everyone, but sometimes it takes me a bit to get back. There have been a lot of questions, and I can't get to them all right now, but I'm planning to share another update soon to cover some of the most common ones. About that letter from Emily, I still haven't read it. Not long after my last update, I went back to therapy, and Dean and I thought it would be smart to hand the letter over to my therapist. We figured they could help me decide if or when I might be ready to take a look at it. Since then, I haven't talked to my mom. I've gotten some messages on Facebook from her and Emily's mom, which was definitely unexpected. I decided not to read the letter and have since turned off my Facebook for a bit. Neither Max nor Emily has tried to reach out on any social media. The only update I got was that Max was asking Bill for my contact info, but Bill wouldn't give it to them. That's how Emily ended up giving him the letter to pass on to me. Right now, Bill isn't talking to his family either. According to Bill, Max and Emily are separated, but he's not sure if they're officially divorced. My dad came to town last week, which was a big deal since he doesn't know where I live, and he hasn't been to my place in almost 20 years. We finally had a real deep conversation. I won't lie, it was a lot to process and left me feeling pretty shaken for a few days, but it felt like something we had to do. I've been doing a lot of thinking and learning about my mom. Some of you mentioned that there might have been stuff from her past that shaped her into who she is today, especially during the time from when Emily got pregnant up until I came back a couple of years ago. It's a whole bunch of stuff to think about, and honestly, it looks like I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time in therapy working through it all. It's a lot to handle, so I'm planning to write another update just about this. And then there's my little sister. I want to make it clear that I never blamed her for not telling me the secret. She was just a teenager back then, and even though she knew it was wrong, our mom really pressured her. After I left, things got really tough for her at home. Our mom was really harsh and blamed her for so much stuff. I also want to say a huge thank you for all the supportive and kind messages you've sent. A lot of you also sent some kind words for Dean, and he's read them. You're totally right. He's amazing. I seriously don't think I'd be where I am now without his support. If you've got good people in your family who are there for you through thick and thin, make sure you let them know how much you appreciate them. Give your parents, your siblings, or whoever's important to you a call, and just tell them you love them. It's times like these that really show us how much we might be taking the good people in our lives for granted. Mini update. Hey there. So, my friend had never been bullied before all this happened. Can you believe it? The whole bullying thing kicked off after she became pregnant. We live in a pretty conservative area, so you can imagine how people reacted to her being pregnant, not married, and on her own. Nobody got physically violent or anything, but folks were definitely not nice about it. They kept throwing her situation in her face, as if she needed reminding. I wasn't sure if everyone knew who the dad was. I kind of just thought the bullying was because she was pregnant. But my dad mentioned something interesting, that she and the guy weren't really an item before all this happened. Now, that could be just a story, but it turns out she actually liked him. So, it wasn't just some random, awkward, drunken hookup. If I had known that bit of info back then, it would have really upset me. But I guess I sort of figured it out on my own, even if nobody actually said it out loud. Her ex had his suspicions, though. They weren't dating by the time of that party, and I heard he wasn't exactly a fan of Max. So, seeing them together must have been a huge warning sign for him. Neither of us was really into the whole party scene, but I guess they decided to go to that one. I can't remember if they showed up together or separately. I'm leaning towards separately, since she had other friends who were more into staying out late. As for the drinking, I never really saw them get super drunk before. Like, to the point of being totally out of control or forgetting what happened. So, I've always had a hard time believing that part of the story. I wasn't there when it all went down, and honestly, looking back, whether they were drunk or not doesn't really change how much it hurt. It was still a betrayal. I remember reading some texts from Max around that time, but never picked up his calls or talked to them once I found out he was the dad. Part of me wishes I had let them have it, told them exactly how much they hurt me, and then just cut off all contact. But back then, I just wasn't in the right headspace to deal with it all. I was pretty sick a lot of the time, too. Now, there's this letter from her that I haven't opened. It feels like my mom is really struggling with the fact that the close-knit family and friend group we used to have when I was younger has fallen apart, along with some other relationships she had. She hasn't come to terms with the reality that none of her 5 kids talk to or see her anymore. None of her grandkids are in her life either. As far as I know, none of us are in contact with her. If I were in her shoes, that would just break me. I can't even begin to guess how she's feeling emotionally. We all think she needs some serious help, like seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist, but she won't hear of it. My eldest brother even tried to get her to see someone, but it's really hard to help someone who doesn't see that they need it.